This is the IDP After Show.
Hello and welcome to the IDP After Show. I am your host, Jeff Pomazal. I'm pleased and privileged to be sharing this space tonight with the writer and ranker over at Footballguys, Joey Hagan, aka Joey the Tooth. Joey, thank you so much for coming on today, talking a little football with me. How have you been?
I've been doing great, man. Just chilling, taking it easy. Ready for football.
Yes, enjoying summer, a little first week of preseason.
Minus the injuries. Jeez Louise.
Oof. Yeah, we've seen some not monster names, but some pretty decent role players, and it's definitely been affecting lineups. So
it's been tough, and it's just hard to swallow, man. And you watch, you're like, I just don't play. Just don't play. Don't play at all. It's preseason. You don't need to.
Yeah, everyone keep holding in.
Right.
Yeah. We saw today that the San Francisco team had a joint practice with the Saints, and they ended up having to cancel practice because they didn't have enough healthy players. It's like, that's like high school stuff almost. So
yeah, as a 49ers fan, it's like, not again.
Yes. I've been doing a lot of the IDP minutes, and every time a San Francisco name comes up, I'm like, oh, poor Joey. No.
Oh, it's always bad news.
Yep. Yeah, it's never a good thing if it's on the IDP minute. So gotta ask, Joey. So got this nickname, Joey the Tooth. That was a high school nickname, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It's not a great story. Like, it's a funny story. A lot of people are always like, oh man, it kind of sounds like mafioso, Joey the Tooth. I'm like, nah, we were stoned on the couch, and my friend said I had small dolphin teeth, so he said, I'm going to call you Joey the Tooth. So I saw him eating a Snickers and drinking a Pepsi, and I said, well, I'm going to call you Snacks. So to this day, we're still Stacks in the Tooth.
So it's way cooler without the story, actually. So if you want to come up with a cool mafia moniker name, that would be that sounds much more trench coaty. And dolphin teeth, like
didn't make any sense to me. I had no idea.
All right, perfect.
Nope.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't following the story. Right.
We were partying, and he was just like, he said dolphin have small teeth. So I said, hey, whatever, man. Totally cool with me.
All right.
I was like, I don't even think I'm offended by that.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. Well, again, this is long overdue for having you on. And so I'm excited for you to be here tonight talking about the fourth and final installment of the IDP Battle Royale series. So for those of you that are new to the IDP Battle Royale concept, Joey and I will be putting one AFC divisional foe against the NFC counterpart by choosing an all-star lineup and determining who will come out on top from an IDP fantasy perspective. The lineups are consist of 2 defensive tackles, 2 defensive end, 3 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks, 2 safeties, and a flex for each division. Afterwards, we'll be awarding a point or a win for each of the positional lineups, and at the end of the show, crowning our AFC NFC West champion. In previous episodes, Aaron Evers and I crowned the NFC North champion over the we crowned the AFC North over the NFC North. Johnny the Greek and I had the AFC East prevailing over the NFC East, and continuing their dominance, Dynasty Trip and I had the AFC South take over the NFC South. So who's going to win tonight? Who's going to take the crown? Will the AFC sweep, or will the NFC finally take one? That's what we're going to find out tonight, as we have the Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders, and Chargers face off against the Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, and Joey's San Francisco 49ers. Joey, you ready to do this thing?
Let's do it.
Let's do this. So let's start off with the AFC West. Let's start off with the defensive tackles. Who are your representatives for the position?
I feel like this is kind of like a no-brainer because they have 2 of the best defensive tackles in the league. Chris Jones with the Chiefs and Christian Wilkins with the Raiders. Chris Jones, he has 26 and a half sacks in the last 2 seasons. Christian Wilkins, he's like, what is he? He's like a 70 tackle a season guy, 80 tackle a season guy. And last year he even upped his sack rate. So, I mean, 2 highly dominant defensive tackles in the NFL. So that's kind of like a no-brainer to me for those 2 guys, especially considering who the Broncos and the Chargers are putting out there.
Yep. And that was kind of my follow-up here. Was there anybody else even in consideration at the defensive tackle position?
No, it was like, as soon as I thought defensive tackles, I was like, oh yeah, no, it's these 2 guys. Like, it's obviously Chris Jones. And I thought for a hot second, I'm like, oh no, the Raiders just signed Wilkins. No, it's definitely him.
Yeah, the only other player that I could even think about right now would maybe be Zach Allen of the Broncos. And he's kind of a dual guy. He plays inside outside, so he doesn't have that true inside designation, but he would be like a distant third, clearly behind these two guys. So
right.
yeah, I think that was a layup for you. We'll start off easy.
Definitely.
All right. Let's move on to the defensive end position, and maybe this is another layup for you. What do you got for the defensive end representing the AFC West?
Well, the layup was Max Crosby. Definitely Max Crosby. And then I ended up going with Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack just came off possibly his best season yet. And the problem is he is aging, and his counterparts, Joey Bosa, who's also proven to be an excellent defensive end / outside linebacker his entire career. His problem's health. So I decided to take Mack over Bosa. And then I was thinking about some of those guys over in Denver, like Jonathan Cooper. You have Nick Bonino, Baron Browning, but none of them have consistently done what Khalil Mack's been able to do. So Khalil Mack literally coming off of one of his best seasons. I don't care. What is he, 33, 34? Doesn't matter. It's Khalil Mack and Max Crosby. Max Crosby's top 3 in the league. So
do you think a healthy Bosa helps Mack, or maybe kind of takes some of the high-end upside away from Mack?
No, I think it helps because it always helps having a counterpart who's highly productive, who's just highly skilled, because you can't just overload one side of the line. So they're going to collapse the pocket either way. If they could find a way to get somebody to rush from the interior, that would help leaps and bounds, or they would just funnel everything in the interior and the Chargers would have themselves a sack machine on the inside. But if they could have done what Jacksonville did and scooped somebody up like Eric Armstead, that would have been a huge move for them. But they're still pretty thin in the middle. But I think having Bosa and Mack, they just help each other because you can't overload one side of the line.
And where do you see Tulupu fitting in kind of in that mix?
I honestly think Bosa maybe takes some time off the field because of his injury history. I think Tuli he'll fill in a little bit there. I still don't think he plays a high number of snaps yet this year. I think it's still going to be Bosa and Mack dominating them as long as they're both healthy, but you can't keep him off the field because he played so good in Bosa's relief last year that he's obviously a playmaker.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that call too about him kind of maybe limiting more Bosa than limiting a Mack at this point, just to kind of maybe try to keep him healthy, because Bosa's been almost every other year injured. So for sure. All right, moving on to everyone's favorite position, the linebackers. Who do you have representing the AFC West at the linebacker position?
All right, even though he just got banged up a bit, Nick Bolton, I still really like Nick Bolton. I think some people are starting to go a little soft on Nick Bolton, but when he's healthy and he's on the field, he's a playmaker. He's a tackle machine. He's efficient. He can cover. I think he's probably the best linebacker in the NFC West. I'm going to go with, AFC West. Alex Singleton with the Broncos. I've never been a Singleton guy. I've always said it's rare for somebody to all of a sudden become an incredibly efficient tackler at his 30-year age season, randomly coming over from the Canadian Football League. He's done it, but he's still not great in coverage. He's just a highly efficient tackler, but luckily for him, that's all the Broncos wanted to do. Like, just tackle. We'll figure out the rest. So Singleton, just racking up tackles. He's my LB2. Robert Spillane, which blew my mind last year because he came on in Pittsburgh the year before, and he just came on in relief of an injured player. I don't even remember who it was, but he came on in relief. He played pretty decent, and it wasn't even mind-blowing. And then the Raiders go and they give him this contract, and he ends up racking up, 150, 160 tackles, 3 interceptions, a couple of sacks. It's like, whoa, where did this guy come from? Like, came from a bench warmer who had a decent season in relief to all of a sudden I'm a star linebacker. It was unbelievable to see. But those are my 3 guys in the NFC West. I thought about Divine Diablo because he's kind of a tackle machine when he's on the field, but Spillane last year proved that he's the playmaker. Like he just filled the stat sheet.
And the thing with Spillane, he's such a Pierce guy. Like, he is totally what Antonio Pierce was as a player when he played. And I think there was even like clips of him going to Spillane and just saying, like, you're going to be the guy. we're going to make this defense around you, and stuff like that. And the moves they made this offseason only help bolster him because they didn't add any competition at linebacker. They only improved that defensive line. Kuntz came along at the end of last season. You got Crosby on the other side. You added, like you mentioned, Wilkins already. That defensive line is going to be kind of scary good, and then that only makes the job of the linebackers that much easier. So I love him as the third option there. So
you had Tavon Wilson too. Not Tavon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They pushed him on the inside, right? He kind of bulked him up a little bit, pushed him on the inside.
I mean, that's a great idea, honestly, because he's not overly athletic. So make him an interior pass rush. I think that's a great move if they do that. And just that line all of a sudden becomes it's almost like what the Cowboys were doing for a while, where they literally had 0 defensive tackles. They had edge rushers across their entire front, what they called their big NASCAR package. It was Parkins, Fowler, Armstrong, and I forget who the last one was. DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yep.
It was the 4 of them. That was their 4-man front. There wasn't a defensive tackle on that front, and they were highly productive.
Yeah, because they just kept kind of rotated through and just kept go. Yeah, it's
right. It's like, well, nobody needs to line up in the same spot because they're all literally there to rush the passer. It's unbelievable. It's a crazy package, but I would love to see more teams start running something like that.
I think some of the success that Dallas had with that is because their offense was so good and teams had to throw. And, and I don't know that if the Raiders offense is going to be Dallas Cowboy-esque, like between Minshew and Caden O'Connell. So it'll be they're getting there. They're getting there, but we'll see.
Little bits at a time.
Yep.
Who knows? Maybe Minshew is going to have an amazing season. That'd be awesome. I would actually love to see
more
that.
magic. Yes, it would be kind of a fun story.
It would.
Moving on to the cornerback position, who do you have representing the AFC West for your 2 corners?
Thought about it a little bit, but it's kind of hard not to just go with Nate Hobbs and Trent McDuffie. They're 2 slot corners. They're great tacklers. Hobbs is actually a phenomenal tackler. Trent McDuffie is a great tackler, but Trent McDuffie is also a playmaker. Like that dude, he's just got a nose for the football. Like his interception numbers are good, but his pass defense are unbelievable. He forces fumbles. He's like a complete package. So like when Snead left, it didn't matter because McDuffie already took over that slot corner spot. So it's like, all right, that's their guy. They have, and his numbers are phenomenal. If you actually look at his coverage grades and everything, like McDuffie's unbelievable. Nate Hobbs is just like, you're reliable. I'm going to grab you 70 tackles and maybe 8-9 passes defense. And I'm cool with that. 70, 80 tackles from a corner. Thank you.
And especially playing that slot corner spot near line of scrimmage, he's going to have a high floor week in and week out. As we get further away from that line of scrimmage, especially when you play those corner positions, you're going to have goose egg weeks, but having that slot corner spot with Hobbs, he never has those. It's 3-4 tackles every single week, so highly efficient.
Yep.
Anybody else in the running there at cornerback? I think that those are 2 slam dunks at the position. I didn't think of anybody else myself. I just didn't know if there was real life Surtain, but
that's what I was thinking is Surtain, but he's almost too good.
Yes.
So it's like, I think teams are starting to stay away from him because when they do throw at him, it's a problem. So Surtain's really good. Like he's phenomenal. So it's kind of like, I couldn't really think of too many others. There's nope, just no. I'm just going to go with no.
Yeah. Just no.
Just no.
Yeah. All right. What about the safety position for the AFC West? Who are your 2 representatives there?
So looking at this position, it's probably one of the weaker positions for the AFC. But Derwin James, obviously, he's still a top 2-3 safety in the league in my eyes. The dude's still phenomenal. He's so versatile. And from what I've heard, they were talking about drawing up some packages for him on offense. So if you can add that to your stat line, sure, why not? But he's already killing it across the board. Why not just throw in a couple of receptions a week? That'd be freaking sweet. But yeah, Derwin James is the guy. And then from there, it was kind of, I'm not sure. I thought about Trayvon Moehrig for for the Raiders because he actually stepped up his tackle numbers a lot last year. He was always just like a deep safety guy, but he upped his tackle numbers last year. Marcus Epps, I had a lot of hope for last year, but didn't really make that leap. So he was kind of right there. Then you get to the Broncos, and I like the Broncos safeties, but I'm not sure who to use yet. I got to watch. We got to see who wins that strong safety spot. So I went with PJ Locke just because as of right now, it seems like he's the front runner for the role, but I don't know who's going to take it. I mean, they love to blitz from that strong safety position, and both Locke and Brandon Jones are phenomenal blitzers from that position. I mean, Jones over the year, that's how he's made his career pretty much, is blitzing from a strong safety position. So whoever wins that spot is my pick here. Right now I'm going with Locke because I think he's got it right now, and Jones needs to get healthy.
And that was the point I was going to bring up. Like, it might be just whoever's healthy is going to be the option there. It's been kind of a weird week in Denver at the safety spots. They let Caden Stearns go. Yeah. They aren't healthy. They're bringing people in, but they're letting people go, and Brandon Jones isn't healthy. It's just like you mentioned earlier,
Skinner in the first
a lot
team.
of injuries. Yeah. So it's just been a weird week as far as like injuries and things like that go. And then, like it might just be whoever's healthy, and that's, IDP, it's all about volume anyway, and whoever's going to be on the field. So the best ability is availability. Isn't that how they say?
That's the IDP. That's been the IDP slogan for years now.
That's Josh Raymer's tattoo. He's got.
Does he really?
No, I told him.
Oh, I thought, I wouldn't really be surprised.
Right.
But
I heard he's got quite a RAS score, though. So I guess that was something that was being thrown out today.
That's a series. Oh, no, it was an RAS score.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Yes. Okay.
The RAS was down.
Yeah. The enunciation was on the wrong syllable. So
that's
so kind of going through this, I know you kind of mentioned some of the names already as far as the defensive tackles, defensive end, linebackers, corners, and safeties. Who would be your flex?
I ended up going with George Karlaftis. Last year he had it was 47 tackles and 10.5 sacks as his second year, and I think he's just going to get better, man. I mean, he's the perfect complement to Chris Jones. Like, Chris Jones is he's a menace on the interior, and so obviously people are going to start breaking out of the pocket, and he just makes Chris Jones makes everybody better. Mike Dana was a usable defensive end last year because of it, but Karlaftis, he's really good. Like, he's just a beast. He's a strong player. He's just nose in the ground, and he had a great season last year. He didn't break out like athletically. Everybody was like, well, I wish he tested a little better, but he showed why people were so big on him when he was at Purdue. I mean, he's just a beast. He's technical, and the 10.5 sacks in the second season, I'm all about that.
It almost feels like Chris Jones has like a mini Aaron Donald effect where he just
100%.
makes everyone around him better. Like he takes on double and sometimes triple teams, and I think, as we'll get to the West here, or the NFC West here in a little bit, and we'll just see what kind of impact Donald has on his retirement has on the other players around him. But Chris Jones kind of feels like he has that impact along the defensive line for the Chiefs, and he just makes everyone's job easier. So,
yep. Like, I was never like a huge Chris Jones guy until the first Super Bowl against the Chiefs and the 49ers. Like, watching the second half, like, the 49ers had that thing wrapped up, honestly. Like, you watch the first 2.5 quarters, you were like, the Niners have this. And then all of a sudden you're watching, and Chris Jones all of a sudden just wakes up and he just starts wreaking havoc.
Yep.
So I remember it was the Niners had the lead, and it was the fourth quarter, and they have the ball, and instead of running the ball on 3rd and long to keep the clock running, they decided to drop play action, and it was George Kittle coming across the middle, and he was wide open. It was everybody killed this call because they threw the ball, but he was wide open. It was such a perfect call, but Chris Jones just, as the throw's coming out, he just throws a freaking arm up like this and bats the ball down. Clock stops, and it was like, since the clock stopped, everybody's like, that was such a bad call, such a bad call. I'm like, honestly, if it was any other defensive tackle, the 49ers might win that Super Bowl.
Yep.
But I was just like, and from there, I was just like, man, this guy single-handedly on that defense just turned this game around. I was like, awful.
Listening to you like relive that moment, like just like can be there in your living room watching you go through the agony of that is like what Kyle Bellafuel and I have to go through as a Packer fan losing to your San Francisco 49ers every year, because
Every year in the playoffs.
Literally there's like one play this is like great play call, everything's there, but Fred Warner steps up, somebody does something like just like big players step up at big times, and that's why you guys have been to the Super Bowl, as many times as you have. But we'll see this year. We'll see what happens this year. So
fingers crossed. Jordan Love, $40 million a year.
Oof. Looked good in his 2 passes the other day. So we'll see. You guys might not be healthy enough. The 49ers might not be healthy enough to get there. So we'll see. You might be getting phone calls. What position do you play?
Me?
Yeah.
Let's see. 5'8", 135 pounds. Not much. Not even kicker.
Wow. They
Maybe
got a
holder.
Kicker, though. Yeah, holder. There you go. So, well, never give up on your dreams. So
I'd crap my pants if I saw those guys all pass rushing at me. I'm like, oh god,
no. Yeah. So Joey, as you kind of went through like the AFC West, was there anything that kind of like stood out to you as far as like, I did not see that coming, or kind of like, whoa, kind of moments?
The amount of Raiders. Like, I was kind of surprised. I was like, all right, so this Raiders defense might be pretty darn good. Like, I'm kind of excited to see how they do it. And honestly, they might be on the field quite a bit. That offense is not going to be great unless they just ground and pound and eat clock. But the defense looks pretty solid there. And with Antonio Pierce as their coach, I mean, I think it's going to be a well-run defense. So I'm excited. It gives me kind of like oh my gosh, the Texans coach. Why am I blanking on his name?
Yeah,
DeMeco Ryans. Yeah, when he was with the 49ers, he left, and I was like, man, they're in good hands. The Texans are in good hands, because he made that 49ers defense what it is now. Like, that defense was always skilled, but once DeMeco Ryans got there, it was like Robert Saleh had that defense pretty locked in, and then DeMeco Ryans came in, and that defense was nasty. Like, it was good. So I was like, that's kind of the vibe you get from Antonio Pierce. It's like, all right, it's having a team buy in. It's not just being a great coach. It's having your team buy in, and then all of a sudden everybody's paying attention. It's like what Dan Campbell did in Detroit. If your team can buy in, you don't need to have all of the talent, and you'll be good. And then all of a sudden you can get talent.
And it's almost exactly what Pierce wants to do. Play really good defense, run the ball, don't create turnover, or don't have turnovers for your offense. Just like, let's win the field position game. Let's, they got a great kicker in Carlson. I can see a lot of these 13-10 ball games, especially with them. So yeah. As I was looking at the selections and picks, it just seemed to be really easy, clear-cut choices. Like, there weren't a lot of like, how do I try to work this player in and stuff like that. It just seemed like, defensive end, super clear-cut, defensive tackle, super clear-cut. Even the linebackers, cornerbacks,
right?
Like, there wasn't probably a debate, I don't think, as who should be in. Even your honorable mentions, Diablo, Morig, Jones, Bosa, like they're probably a clear 3 if you're looking at these players.
So I think the takeaway is the AFC West is super top heavy. They have a lot of good stars, and then after that, it's like,
okay. It's been interesting too, because doing this with the other divisions, the AFC is just so dominant at every position, especially the edge players and depth. The depth of talent at some of these positions it's obscene almost how much talent the AFC has over the NFC. So, all right, not to spoil anything, but we'll see where that takes us as we get a little later into the show. But let's turn over now to the NFC counterpart and looking at like the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the 49ers, and Rams. Starting with the defensive tackles, who do you have representing the AFC West? Or I'm sorry, the NFC West.
I have Kobe Turner, who was a phenomenal rookie last year, filled in beautifully for Aaron Donald. I mean, he got to play with, but Kobe Turner is phenomenal. I love this kid. He's young, he's powerful, he's quick, he can pass rush, he can play the run defense. I'm a big fan. And I honestly, going into last season, didn't know much about the kid. And I just started watching him play, being in the NFC West. And like, this kid's pretty good. And then he just started almost dominating. So I honestly think personally, I think Turner has top 10 defensive tackle potential, if not even higher, just because the mix of your tackle floor and your pass rushing ceiling. Like, he's got a great pass rush ceiling. So Kobe Turner, one of my favorite defensive tackles this season as a breakout, if you don't consider his rookie season as a breakout.
I'm going to ask the obvious question, Joey. Can he do it without Aaron Donald?
I think so, just because of the two they brought in. So this defensive line, I'm ashamedly in love with, considering it's the Rams. But it's like, all right, so you have Byron Young, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Byron Young had a great rookie season, kind of not really out of the blue. Like, he was always productive in Tennessee, but he wasn't like he didn't seem like a highly dominant player, but he played phenomenal as a rookie. You had Kobe Turner, who played phenomenal as a rookie. And then this draft, they go in and they take possibly one of the top pass rushing, and it's either Letu or it's going to be Verse. Letu's obviously, I think he's the more skilled, but Verse is in a great position to play a lot of snaps, play a lot of volume. So you have Jared Verse, and then they bring in his teammate, Braden Fisk. So you already have cohesiveness with Verse and Fisk, and then you add two potential top 5 defensive rookies from last year in Young and Turner. And it's not like when Aaron Donald was there, like, you had in his time, he had it was Aaron Donald, and then he had Dante Fowler one season. He made Dante Fowler great, and then Dante Fowler wasn't really great anywhere else. Leonard Floyd came over from Chicago when he was almost considered a bust, and then all of a sudden he's nasty. And then I think he actually helped Floyd himself, because Floyd from there was productive the rest of his career, and hopefully going into this year with San Francisco too. But Turner kind of goes in, and he has talent all across him. So he doesn't have to worry about being so much attention. Like, he doesn't attract so much attention like Aaron Donald did. They kind of have to watch everybody on the line. So I don't think he has the same talent level as Aaron Donald. He's not going to make everybody better, but I don't think he's going to have so much attention where it takes away from his production. Not that it ever happened to Aaron Donald, but that's just because he was potentially the best defensive tackle ever. So.
No, and I love that take too, just because, instead of having one guy for the offensive line to focus on in Donald, now they have potentially 4 players, and, that's just that constant play after play after play is going to wear an offensive line down. And, we've seen a lot of offensive linemen go down already this training camp, and they're already getting to those, we're seeing the trades already happen right now with, the second and third guards on teams being traded and pick swaps and things like that. And the defensive
crazy.
line is probably going to eat this year, across the league, just because of the shallowness of that position. So I totally can see that happening. All right. Not to digress any more about Aaron Donald, but who do you have as your second defensive tackle?
Oh yeah. I almost forgot. Javon Hargrave. He's just been pretty much since his last season in Pittsburgh. He's been one of the more consistent pass rushing defensive tackles in the NFL. He went to Philly. He did it. He came over to San Francisco. He did it. And my worry was that he was going to have some bit of a fall off, because he had that one really productive season in Pittsburgh, and every other season before that was pretty mediocre. But then he did it in Philly. He did it again in San Francisco. I don't see why he can't do it again. I mean, that defense in San Francisco is just so stout. Like, the secondary strong, the linebacker group's fantastic, which makes the quarterback hold onto the ball a little longer, and Hargrave just coming up the pocket just eats. And you have Bosa collapse in the pocket. So, and you add Floyd in there now too. So that pocket's just going to collapse.
Do you think the loss of Chase Young hurts that defense, or is he just more of, because he surprisingly had 10 sacks last season, which I probably would have lost a lot of bets on, but
yeah, no, he was good. He played well, but I mean, Floyd's coming off his 3rd or 4th consecutive season of at least 9.5 sacks. So I'm not really all that worried there in that aspect. And
kind of a push,
he's probably playing across from his best counterpart ever. I mean, Nick Bosa is a beast. So,
speaking of Nick Bosa, got him as your number 1 defensive end, which is probably not a shock to anybody. So,
especially in the NFC West, like, I was looking at edges in the NFC West, and I was like, you have Bosa, he's elite, and there's not really much more elite after that. There's a lot of guys that are intriguing, but I don't think there's anybody else that's really elite yet. So Bosa's the obvious pick. I ended up going with Byron Young of the Rams just because his tackle. It was between him and Mafe, but as I'm looking at it, Young, he had more tackles, he had more sacks. Mafe had more forced fumbles, and Mafe had like a 8-week sack streak, and he finished the season with 8 sacks. So it's like he didn't have a sack any other game outside of that streak. So Young was just kind of consistent throughout the season. He started off hot, slowed down a little bit, but then he came right back around and he proved that he's legit. And I like Byron Young. And I really like that defensive line.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Mafe is probably one of the a consideration there. Do you feel like with Uchenna Nwosu coming back, that helps not only that whole Seattle defense, but also helps Mafe because now they got somebody on the other side. They got Leonard Williams there in the middle still clogging up things. So
I'm intrigued to see what Seattle does with that line, because I don't know if there's going to be one person that dominates snaps, because you have Uchenna Nwosu, you have Boye Mafe. They're probably going to be your starting edge defenders, but you still have Derek Hall kind of lingering back there. He's a decent pass rusher, so he might get some situational pass rushing. You have Draymond Jones, you have Leonard Williams, you have they got Jaron Reed back, right? Mm-hmm. So you have 3 interior pass rushers, all with experience also on the edge. So you have this slew of good defenders, all with experience across the line. I don't know if there's going to be one person that really dominates snaps. So that's my worry with anybody in Seattle. I think Nwosu coming off the edge helps out Mafe a little bit, because they're going to have to pay attention to the other side, because last year nobody really had too much. And I think that's also why they traded for Leonard Williams last year, because they were so thin on the edge and he was obviously available. So they said, well, we can kind of interchange him. He can play inside, outside if any. So I think he ended up predominantly playing inside, but I do think Nwosu does help Mafe, but I'm not really sold on anybody on that defensive line being overly productive.
Coaching change, is that the hesitation, or just a lot of the players kind of the same type of player?
So I feel like Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed, and Leonard Williams are all the same player. And the fact that they can interchange and move to the edge, like if somebody's struggling, if Mafe has like second year slump, or if Nwosu's still coming back, they might lose some time, because you might be able to slide Leonard Williams out. It's probably a fear that's not going to happen, but there's just too many mouths there. And I don't see one person that you can sit there and say, yeah, he's just not going to get snaps.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've started to look at when I look at my lineups and making my decisions on like roster cuts and things like that. If I find myself saying on players, that's already my answer. If I have a player that I don't have to worry about saying if for, that's my decision's already made. And like you said, if you're already trying to play that if game, like if Nwosu comes back healthy, if they're not struggling, you kind of already have your decision already made up, not only for your lineup, but like for this exercise, it's Byron Young. So there's no if right now with Byron Young.
You have one defensive line that you're overly excited on and one that you're completely confused on. So it's like I'm going with the one I'm overly excited on.
Yep. And Mafe and Nwosu would be great, like best ball picks, like a couple rounds later after Byron Young, because if you hit, you're going to probably win your league. But taking them on the same level as like a Byron Young probably is not a wise decision. So probably what will be a wise decision is picking these 3 linebackers, though. So who do you have as a linebackers here, Joey?
Fred Warner, Ernest Jones, and Kaiser White. So Fred Warner is my man. He's possibly the best linebacker in the league. I'm going to say he's one of the best linebackers in the league. He's a top 5. He's elite in coverage. Like you can watch him follow a tight end down the seam. You can watch him follow a slot receiver down the seam. He's just that good. He's a phenomenal tackler. He runs that 49ers defense that's just been strong since he's got there. He made everybody forget about Reuben Foster. They were drafted in the same draft. Reuben Foster was supposed to be the Mike, and then he got injured, and Fred Warner just stepped in. He was playing second string at that time, and he stepped in and he took a starting role, and then he just ran with it. He played that rookie season, and he was phenomenal. And they were like, "Yeah, Reuben Foster, you're kind of crazy. Just get out of here."
he was BYU, right? Was it
Fred Warner? Yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
he was BYU. He was BYU. Reuben Foster was Alabama. And
yeah, so you have the pedigree and the
Yep. But Fred Warner, he's just phenomenal. He's a playmaker. He's great in coverage. He can tackle. He does it all. Ernest Jones, I've become a huge fan of because he's kind of similar. He plays well in coverage, but he's a good blitzer. He's a tackle machine because there's nobody else still in the middle of that defense for the Rams. Who's going to play Christian Roseboom this year? It's going to be him and Roseboom. I don't see a time where Jones comes off the field at all.
And that was interesting because Jones had kind of been dinged up the last couple of days in camp. So trying to dig and find out who in Jones's absence, who was playing linebacker. And there literally was nobody. They played without a,
oh my gosh,
so that just goes to show you like the floor that Ernest Jones has. Like he's going to be a set it and forget it type linebacker if healthy in that position. Now, obviously, if he got hurt, somebody would obviously play that position, but they went through days of practice without anybody in that position just because they're like you said, Roseboom is not Ernest Jones. Like there's not an equivalent on that team. And they run a lot of one linebacker looks and things like that. And, I know there was some speculation with Cameron Curl coming in, if he would kind of sneak down and maybe play a little bit of a hybrid role, but report out of camp is that he's playing deep and,
I know,
a lot
that's
more
kind of
cover
crazy.
stuff. Yeah, I was like, what are they doing? No.
I know. So, I love the guy. And then it's like, no, don't do that. And John Johnson taking over the strong safety spots. Like, what? Hold on.
Yeah. And you got Quentin Lake in there, like playing some nickel stuff. I'm like, this is gross. This feels gross.
This is the worst ever. Just stop it. You guys are killing me.
Yeah. As much as you love their defensive line, right?
Right. It's like they're pissing me off in the secondary. But yeah, Ernest Jones, I mean, he's got to be the guy. My third linebacker, I was kind of tossed up. I was like, should I grab one, either Baker or Dodson? Or, I mean, Kaiser White's uber efficient when he's in there. He got dinged up a little bit last year, but before he got injured, he was averaging about 9 tackles a game. So, and he proved his final year in LA. I think he had 143 tackles, and then he had a couple of sacks. He's pretty decent in coverage. He's a former safety. So I went with Kaiser White because, again, the defensive line in Arizona is, just say poop. It's not good. It's not good at all. That defensive line's poop. So there's going to be a lot funneling into that second level, and they don't really have much else in the linebacker position too. Like that defense is pretty thin until you get to the safety position. So Kaiser White's my LB3.
Yeah, I love Kaiser White as the call here. I've been scooping up a lot of Mac Wilson shares late. Just because, like you said, there's no one on that defense. Like that defensive line, obviously they took a big hit with Ojulari going down last week, and there was no one there before. Probably going to see a lot of Darius Robinson playing, but Kaiser White's like the first name you get to on that defense, and hopefully he stays healthy because he only played 11 games last season and he put up 148 points. But if he stays healthy, he's gonna, like you said, he's gonna eat and just be, uber efficient, especially where you can get him in drafts right now too. He's probably LB3 draft status, maybe. Right. And so you're getting a LB1 upside. That's sign me up all day.
Yeah. I'm intrigued to see who wins the position next week, because they're going to play a lot of two linebackers. So it's got to be Mac Wilson or Owen Popo, you'd think, right? Who else is there? I'm just trying to think who else is on that roster. I'd love
Dennis
to see
Gardeck,
Popo,
but
he's on the outside.
More defensive. Yeah. So.
And they need that now with Ojulari out.
Yes.
He's kind of a sneaky sleeper too. I just couldn't put him over Young or anybody, but he's kind of one of those guys. Grab him for best ball for sure.
We're going to have to put a new spot on here, the sleeper spot. So after the flex, we'll put in a sleeper position on the Battle Royale stuff. So
I like it.
There you go. You just invented it. Sadly, it came on the last one of them. So should have had you on first.
The last one this year.
Last one this year. Thank you. How about the corners?
So I went with Charvarius Ward for the 49ers. Just even though he's an outside corner, he had an unbelievable year. He had just about 70 tackles. He had 5 interceptions and 23 passes defended. Like that's absurd. That's absurd. So especially in leagues that are giving you good points for passes defended, the guy's a beast, and he's still getting thrown at because for some odd reason, I don't know why, honestly, because he's been a number 1 corner since he was in Kansas City. And then he came over to San Francisco. He's their number 1 corner, but he still gets thrown at. He still gets thrown at a lot. Apparently, he's not elite in coverage, but I would like to not agree with that at all. I mean, I love Charvarius Ward, but he's the CB1 and he's an outside corner, so I like that.
Well, kind of like the Surtain conversation we had earlier. You want your cornerbacks to be good, not great, because if they're great, they don't get thrown to. Right. Johnny the Greek has taught me one thing. It's like you don't want to have your elite cornerbacks on your team because you want to have the guy opposite of them because they're the one that are going to get peppered with targets and
right. And then that evolved to slot corners, which brings me to my second. Devon Witherspoon for the Seahawks. He had a great rookie season. I was a big fan of his coming out of college, and he had I think it was 60 plus tackles. He had a couple interceptions, and he had 16 passes defended last year as a rookie. And that's just huge. And the fact that he's going to probably play nickel again in Seattle on a defense that's questionable. I don't really know. I don't know. I'm not overly excited, but I'm not like looking at him like, oh, wow, it's like Arizona. Arizona is just thin. Like they have talent throughout that team, but it could go either way with that team. Right. Like there's good talent. They just need some guys that are going to step up. But I think Witherspoon is that guy in that secondary that can step up because he can cover that slot really good, and he can cover tight ends. It's not just slot receivers. He can cover tight ends. He's a strong corner. So Witherspoon's going to be my CB2.
Anybody else you're thinking of possibly, or those two guys kind of for sure is for you?
So if Lenoir in San Francisco plays the slot, that would be intriguing to me because they don't really have a slot corner. So, but from what I heard, especially with how thin they're getting, Ambry Jones got injured and he's been kind of had issues with missed tackles. There's a possibility he's going to move outside, and they just drafted a rookie, Reynaldo Green, who has experience in the slot, and he played well at Florida State. So there's the potential that he comes in, he becomes their slot corner, or they move Jair Brown up a little bit. That guy's a playmaker. He's played well in the slot. He played the slot a little bit at Penn State. He played great last year in the playoffs for the 49ers. Like him in the Super Bowl, him and the other playoff game was just, he had 21 tackles and an interception in 2 games. The guy's a beast.
He had to be because there was no one else there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. It was him and Tayshaun Gibson.
Yep.
It's like he filled in for Hufanga, and it was like, oh, this kid can play. That's great. But I would not be surprised if he got some run, but they don't really have depth at safety. So I think he's going to have to be stuck in that safety role next to Hufanga. So it's going to, for now, it's Witherspoon and Ward, and we'll see if somebody takes over a slot spot in San Francisco, but I don't know who it is yet.
Hey, you guys are really banged up, aren't you?
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
We didn't even mention Greenlaw, so I know. Sorry, this is a safe space, Joey. This is safe. Space.
It's all right. I really love the fact that they went and got Campbell to replace Greenlaw for this year, or at least for most of this year. As soon as he was gone from Green Bay, I was like, they're gonna go sign Campbell. I was like, that's the perfect 1-year signing for the 49ers right now. And they did it. And I was like, first off, I was like, this, like, yeah, I called that. But I was just like, no, that's great for that team because you filled Greenlaw's shoes with somebody who's proven he can play. It's not like they're just like, well, we'll take somebody off the second string. They're still confident in a Super Bowl. That's what it told me.
Totally off tangent. Who's the third linebacker right now for you in San Francisco? Is it D. Winters?
Gotta be, I guess. I don't even know, man. It's kind of scary. Hufanga, I could see him. I would move him up.
Yeah.
I'd be totally cool with that.
He's getting healthy. He should be coming back within the next week or two of practices. Hopefully be ready for week 1. So
I hope so. He's a playmaker. And it's not the hair, but he has that Polamalu-esque to his game. It's like seems reckless, but he's just making plays. Like Polamalu just seemed like he was out of control, but so in control. It's a crazy thing to watch. But Hufanga kind of has that to him, and I love it.
And that's probably why you have him as one of your safeties representing the NFC West. So
that's right. He's a playmaker. He can tackle, he can cover, he can blitz, he does it all. And the 49ers use him in every aspect. So he's one of my safeties, along with the ever steady Budda Baker. And for the past few seasons, underrated Budda Baker.
Yes. Yep.
Like he had his 140 tackle season, and everybody was like Budda Baker, and then he kind of came back down to earth, but still had a really good season. But everyone's like, oh, it's Budda Baker now. It's like, oh no, he's still Budda Baker. It's like he's still a 100+ tackle guy.
It's so funny, like how, especially at the defensive back position, how the turnover is so much, and it's what have you done for me lately kind of thing. And
right,
especially at that defensive back position, whoever finishes number 1 the one year, it's like, ooh, here comes some regression, and it's not a positive regression either. So
right.
Yeah.
That's what makes Derwin James so good.
Yes.
Like Derwin James has been steady there for a few years now, and he hasn't really declined. So only when he gets injured.
And if he's going to be getting some offensive snaps, he's going to be DB1.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah. Jason I'd be smiling somewhere. So.
And John Macri.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. They would love this episode between Max Crosby and Derwin James. So
I know, right?
Who do you have as your flex?
You actually saved me on this one because I almost totally forgot about Julian Love. And we were going over our notes. You were like, I had Mafe in here, and you're like, what about Julian Love? I was like, ooh, boy, how did I forget that name? Man's been solid for the past, 3 years now? And I actually...
A couple with the Giants, and
I remember when he was a rookie coming out of Boston College, I was a huge fan of Julian Love. I wanted the 49ers to take him because of his versatility, playing safety, playing nickel, playing outside. I was like, he's a defensive back that can play anywhere on the field. And the only thing that worries me a little bit about Love this year is that he's that good and that versatile on a defense that's questionable. So they brought in Rayshon Jenkins, who's a predominantly strong safety. Like he's a box safety. That's what he does. I mean, I think he played 60% of his snaps in the box with Jacksonville. So you bring him in. So now what does that mean? Does that take Love out of that spot because Witherspoon's playing the nickel? Does Love now drop back to free safety? Does that matter all that much because he played free safety quite a bit in New York and he still was a tackle machine? Again, it comes up to the what ifs, but the fact that he's been so productive over the past 3 seasons, it's you gotta bet on Julian Love. So I'm going with Love here.
And I think he's like in that Budda Baker conversation, just consistency at a very inconsistent position, like where there's turnover every year. The top 12 just kind of has this new cycle of names. Love has been one of those guys that has been there the last 2 or 3 seasons consistently. And, sign me up for that, especially at a defensive back position. So
yeah, consistency is key.
Problem with Love is he's going pretty early. Like you have to take him as like one of the top 12 defensive backs, and
I know
you're almost buying him at his ceiling. So
I know, which is really hard for me to do.
Yeah, right.
Especially with saying the ifs.
Yeah. You're going to have to get you and Evan Ringler in an episode because you're questionable all the time with the Seattle, and that's his team. So it'll be kind of funny to hear you guys duke it out. A little battle royale.
He's a Seattle guy.
Yeah.
All right, Evan, we're just not talking anymore. Sorry, dude.
Just ghosted him. Just
block. No.
Any other players that we haven't mentioned as far as like honorable mention guys that you were kind of thinking about maybe getting in, and then I'll let you go right into what stood out for you in this. So
it's got to be the the Seahawks linebackers, Tyrell Dodson, Jerome Baker. You don't know really. I don't really know who's going to play what role, how it's going to play
Questionable.
out. We're going back to the Seattle theme here, but I mean, there could be one guy there that really dominates, or it could be like it was Brooks and Wagner, Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner. They both were 130, 140 tackle guys, and that potential's still there. If you can have two guys play healthy and 100% win their roles, I'm for it. And I would love to see them get crafty with blitzing with Baker, because he's been a pretty good blitzing middle linebacker for his career. And if they can actually get some blitzing potential from the middle of that defense, mix things up a little bit, I would love to see that. But so it was the two linebackers in Seattle. I like Leonard Floyd in San Francisco, just because, I mean, he's kind of going to have that thing like, I'm almost going to have a one-on-one every day now because I have Nick Bosa on the other side of me. So this might be another like Aaron Donald type year. Cameron Curl moved to an honorable mention, unfortunately, because of his drop to free safety. But John Johnson also became an honorable mention because he's playing strong safety, and he had his best years when he was playing in LA. Obviously, it's not the same defense, but his position, he understands it. I like Jair Brown a little bit, but he's probably going to be a free safety. Unless the 49ers run a little cover two, I'm not sure, but I just like him so much after watching him in the playoffs. Rayshawn Jenkins, he kind of sneaks in there because of just the position he plays. And he has a lot of missed tackles. He's not great in coverage, but he does have a lot of tackles. Like he has those games where he's going to get you 10 tackles from the safety position, and that's a game winner right there, especially in best ball. It's like if you can all of a sudden you have Jenkins sitting there at the bottom of your bench, and then you have those weeks where he's giving you 13 tackles and a pick, or 10 tackles and 3 passes defense, and you're like, thanks, dude, needed that. Yep. But he can have those weeks for you. And then Boye Mafe. I like Boye Mafe. I probably should have thrown in Woso in there too, but I like to see him come back healthy, and he still hasn't eclipsed that 10 sack mark yet in his career. That's the only reason I'm a little shaken on Woso. He's good, and his efficiency numbers are phenomenal, and his pass rushing grades are great. I just need to see the production too. I mean, it's there. It's obviously he has the talent, so it can be there. It was like when Max Crosby, everybody was like, well, his first year wasn't huge, and sure, he has pressures, but pressures don't relate to, they don't equal sacks. And it's like, oh, come on. It was like when everybody's bashing PFF for saying you can't follow PFF to get IDP production. It's like, well, you can. You just need to read it. It's like Max Crosby almost leads the league in pressures, but he had like 8 sacks that year. It's like, it's there. He's just, it's going to be there. He's just one step behind, or he's just getting chopped or something. He's going to come up. And then after that, I was like, oh, wow, Max Crosby, he's like a top 3 DE. It's like, I think we were talking about that for a year now, but everybody wanted to talk about how pressures don't matter.
And it's such a like fluky stat
right.
Sacks are, like you said, quarterback gets rid of the ball, throws it away and stuff like that. And, and the stat line, you're not getting any points for that in traditional scoring. And I think that's why I like Big 3 scoring so much, because those players are getting rewarded for those pressures or those quarterback hurries, and like in real football, you got that Crosby's chasing the quarterback down and he throws the ball away. That's a huge play in a real NFL game.
100%.
Those players should be rewarded in your fantasy teams for that. And that's kind of the draw to Big 3 scoring for me is, your good players, regardless if they get the official sack or not, still are going to have an impact on a play. So,
right.
I'll get off my soapbox, but sorry.
That's good. I love it. I went on the pressure rant too. Don't worry. I brought it up. I think so. We're good.
Yeah, maybe you started it. I'll just blame it on you. So.
I'll take it.
Joey, Yeah, that's all right. Anything stood out to you on the NFC portion? Besides Seattle being questionable.
Seattle's questionable, and the Cardinals are scary bad. It's
bottom 5 defense again. Bottom 5 for sure.
I don't see how they can't be, but yeah, especially they have to be. Ojulari out. I'm intrigued with Darius Robinson, because he's probably going to have to play a lot, and he might move all across that line because they're going to need edge help. I would I think that's the perfect move for him. Have him out on the edge a little bit, move him on the inside for pass rushing downs. Let him rush the passer. Let him get off the edge on the first downs, and then on passing downs, come up the middle. I mean, make him like pretty much just a predominant pass rusher. I think that's where he's going to make his money. I mean, he's never really been great in run defense. He hasn't also really been great as a pass rusher. I mean, his metrics aren't really that they don't really stand out that well, but he's just versatile. So if he can get coached right and just get the volume, he could be a guy.
Yep. And I was going to say volume's king. So if he can get those snaps, then he's going to have an opportunity for snaps because, like you said, there is no one else there. So Dennis Gardeck could be a sneaky play, especially if you can get defensive line eligibility. Like right now, he's listed as a linebacker on Sleeper. That would be cheat code right there. So
Sleeper.
Yeah.
And Evan Ringler, Seattle's questionable.
Okay.
That's my takeaway.
And I'm out.
I think we just started a feud. I love it.
That's right. Yeah. Before the season even gets started. So
yep.
We'll do the MTV battles, like with the claymation, whatever those were called back in the day. Celebrity Deathmatch.
Yes.
Celebrity Death. Yes.
So good.
We'll get a claymation Joey and a claymation Evan, and we'll just have it battle out. Yep. Perfect. All right, let's get into the voting portion of this. Defensive tackles. Would you rather have Chris Jones, Christian Wilkins, or Kobe Turner, Javon Hargrave?
I gotta go Jones and Wilkins. I love Turner and Hargrave, but it's Jones and Wilkins pretty easily.
Yeah. Defensive end. Would you rather have Max Crosby, Khalil Mack, or Nick Bosa, Byron Young?
The Khalil Mack over Byron Young takes for me for the AFC. I think Crosby and Bosa almost cancel each other out, but Mack, I think, he's just really good. He's got so much skill. His age is the only thing that draws me, but he's just so skilled. And Byron Young's got a bright future, but as of right now, I got to go with Crosby and Mack.
Does Max huge games, like where he blew up for like 60 points, he had like an obscene amount of points, he had like 1/4 of his points in like 3 games, does that worry you at all as far as?
No, because he was still productive in his games otherwise. Like he it wasn't just that, like, what was it? What did he have, a 6-sack game?
Yeah, it was like 60 points or something.
But I mean, even after that, what did he finish the season with? 18 sacks?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even you take away those 6, he still has 12 sacks.
Okay. Just playing devil's advocate. Yeah. I agree with you. I'm taking Max Crosby and Khalil Mack too. So
yep.
Just asking the questions that the good people are probably thinking themselves. So.
Asking the tough questions.
Yeah, that's right. Linebacker. This is the toughest one for me. I was struggling between Bolton, Singleton, Spillane, or Warner, Jones, White.
It might be the homer in me, but I had to take Fred Warner. I have to take the NFC West. I mean, Warner and Jones to me are top 10 linebackers, at least for IDP. And Kaiser White has that potential to be top 15. So you have 3 top 15 linebackers. And then I've always been iffy on Singleton. It's just me. It's a me thing, I think. Bolton's a little banged up right now, and Spillane is a 1-year breakout guy so far. So little less known about those 3.
And that's kind of how I had to go through it too. I kind of broke it down like, okay, Warner's a for sure top 15, 12 guy. Jones is a for sure top guy. White has the upside there. Singleton for sure is probably going to be there just based on volume because they didn't have a lot of other options at linebacker. I know there's a battle right now between Cody Barton and Jonas Griffith for the second linebacker. So Singleton's for sure is going to get that. Spillane, like you said, is a cool story. We don't know if it's going to repeat. And Bolton, I like as a bounce back candidate. So yeah, I'm going to kind of give the nod to the NFC part here with Warner, Jones, and White too. Just consistency and just that upside play with White, I think, is the wild card there for me. So cornerbacks, Nate Hobbs, Trent McDuffie, Travarius Ward, Devin Witherspoon.
I love the ball skills of the NFC West corners, but I got to give it to Hobbs and Trent McDuffie because they're literally probably 2 of the top cornerbacks in the league for IDP. Like they play the premier position for IDP, playing in that slot. They have high floors with playmaking ability, and as much as I love the fact that Ward is a phenomenal IDP corner playing on the outside, he doesn't have the floor the other guys have. So I don't think he's going to have another 5 interception season. He could, but those 5 interceptions really boosted his IDP production, and those 23 passes defense. If people start to shy away from Ward, then all of a sudden he becomes virtually irrelevant. So I have to go with the 2 slot corners.
Yeah, and I think the tackle floor of Hobbs and McDuffie are the thing there. Is there any worry about with Snead no longer in Kansas City that McDuffie goes and plays a corner, like a true traditional corner, or?
No, I don't think so. I think he fits that position far too well to take him from it. I think
have him play out of position. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was just overly dominant in that position. So
yeah. At safety, Derwin James, PJ Locke, or Budda Baker, Talanoa Hufanga?
I had to go with the NFC West here just because I will take Budda Baker or Hufanga over Locke 3 times. Derwin James is still a top 3 safety for me, but Hufanga and Baker are both top 10. And Locke is just kind of a guy you hope wins you some best ball leagues.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's the way I approach it too. James is for sure here, elite level, top 3. Baker and Hufanga are probably like that the next tier, that like 6, 7, 8. But then Locke is totally a wild card.
Yeah.
And like we said, the NFC or the AFC West has, who else are you going to take? Brandon Jones isn't healthy. Are you going to take Morig or Epps from the Raiders?
Justin Reed maybe, but
right. Aloha Gilman, are you going to take James's running mate? It's to that point. Like who else is there?
Right.
And obviously somebody will step up. And if we had crystal balls, we could see that. But sitting here the middle of August, this is what we're doing. So
yep,
I'm with you there with Baker and Hufanga. And finally at the flex spot, we had George Karlaftis and Julian Love.
I think I had to go with Love just because of the floor. I mean, once you're at that flex position, that's pretty much what you're looking for. You want somebody who will at least get you something. Like having a defensive end, sure, it's going to win you some leagues or some weeks, but it's also going to be like, I should have went with somebody else.
Yeah,
weeks.
The upside is probably going to win you like 5 or 6 weeks, but
right.
Consistently, Love is going to win you the other 12.
Right. Exactly.
Yep. Totally agree with you. Well, if my math is math, and Joey, we have a tie. So all season long, the AFC has dominated every one of these, and it wasn't even close. It was like 10-12. It was pretty significant that the AFC was dominant. And for that reason, we're going to give a bonus point to the AFC. So we're going to have the AFC sweep the IDP Battle Royale series just because we can. Looking ahead to like an episode like this next year, are there any rookies that you see? I know we already mentioned, Robinson as somebody, but are there any other rookies that you could see possibly like sneaking into the conversation as being an LB, a safety, a corner, an edge this time next year?
I'd love to see how Jared Verse does in his rookie year, playing with the Rams, playing across from Byron Young. I mean, he's super talented. Like coming out of college, I feel like he's far more built for the NFL than Byron Young was coming out of college, and Byron Young had a dominant season. So I'm very intrigued to see what Verse does in that defensive line. Kind of sneaky sleeper is Reynaldo Green from San Francisco. If we're talking corners, like if he can secure a slot spot, that's predominantly what he played in college. That'd be a pretty huge deal for him, starting slot corner in San Francisco. Jaden Hicks, safety in Kansas City, because that safety group is also kind of questionable. I mean, right now I think it's Brian Cook and Justin Reed are starting, and Hicks is the second string strong safety. So if Hicks can, I mean, I know he was impressing coaches a little bit early in camp. If he can keep that up and then take over a role next year, Hicks could be a guy. Tyrese Knight, linebacker in Seattle, we were talking about earlier. You were saying he was impressing in his preseason game, and obviously that's a questionable position with Baker and Dodson. I mean, Baker's been good for his career, but he's never been a world beater. Dodson has looked well at times, but again, it's never they're not a guy you're like, oh yeah, that's the guy. So who knows if maybe these two guys are one and done. Knight comes in and takes over a starting role next year.
Yeah, it just is interesting too. Like that whole defense has just changed so much from last year. Obviously with Wagner and Brooks are being gone, and Wagner was on his second run in Seattle anyway, but it was just like this new regime has come in. Now they're kind of putting their guys in. I know that Dodson's running with the green dot right now in Seattle. So it'll just be an interesting season to see how things play out. Week 1 and week 2 will be a big learning curve for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, listeners, what do you think? Do you agree with the players that were chosen? The breakdown of how the points fell out? We'd love to hear your comments down below. Were we too hard on Seattle? I know Evan Ringler will be in the comment section for sure, but we'll let you guys do that. So, Joey, before heading out here today, anything that you're working on, and where can the listeners find more of your fantastic work?
You can find all of my work at footballguys.com. I have my IDP projections and rankings up there for the season, both dynasty and redraft. And then in season, I'm going to be doing same weekly article I did last year. It's defensive line streaming weekly streamers. So I do defensive ends and I do interior defensive linemen streamers for the week, just based off of matchup against offensive line. So if you're sitting there, you decided to go linebacker heavy early and you have a thin defensive line, follow the article because it tells you who you can pick up. Like a lot of it's pretty deep too. A lot of it's guys who are either sitting on the bench or people who are available on waivers. So it helps out those deep IDP leagues.
I think that'll be a fantastic, just because we're all just so in awe of the linebacker position that, that's just like the Cadillac of position. So everyone's for sure knows linebackers, but you get into that second, third week and you're like, man, I'm losing a lot of my points defensive end wise or things like that. So
I started writing this article because it was kind of my draft strategy. I started going linebacker heavy in a lot of IDP drafts because after the top, 10 defensive ends, they always go so early, the top 10 edge. It's kind of like the teardrop's pretty big. So I almost just started shooting darts at defensive ends. So I ended up having to stream a lot. So I'd have one good defensive end and it almost seemed like I was streaming the other defensive end all season. So then I was like, I should just start writing an article about this.
Just turn your research into something for everyone. So
right, exactly.
Yep. Well, fantastic. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the IDP After Show. Join me next time as I'm joined by Mr. Green Dot himself, Mr. Mike Woolert, as we dive into everyone's favorite linebacker or position, the linebackers. Mike and I are going to discuss some players that we're buying, selling, and holding at the position. You're not going to want to miss that one. Be sure that you don't miss any of the other IDP goodness. Make sure you follow, like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you never miss an episode of the IDP Show or the IDP After Show. For Joey and myself, we say thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch up with you next time.
This was the IDP After Show.